Right.
So.
Right. Let me get this one back up. I wasn't even watching the time. I could just sit and talk to you for ages. Nobody tells it the way you tell it. All right. We are live because I can hear myself talking. Let me click that off. All right. Can you still hear me?
Yes, everything perfect.
Can you hear me, Randy?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Nope, I can't hear you. Let's see. Oh, wait, let me do it this way. Okay.
Is that good?
Yep. Now we
Okay.
got you. All right. And we are live. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce you. So I've got sitting with me today, Randy Veitenheimer, who is a creative, energetic health expert. I'm not even sure what to call you. I'm blown away by you. That's going to show up in all of this. I took this right off your website. So uniquely combining healing techniques from quantum physics, Native American medicine, Chinese martial arts, Kundalini yoga, Ayurvedic, and traditional medicine. Randy also hosts Gaia's original series, Quantum Effect, as well as featured guest in Undisclosed. And I highly recommend those two. If you have not seen those, I highly recommend you go get on Gaia and check that out. He's also appeared on Open Minds with Regina Meredith and Beyond Belief with George Norrie. I'm just in awe of you. I want to tell the people who follow me, and I've been talking to you for probably about 2 months, and it actually came about from kind of a weird place, but just trying to figure out the spirit portion, which is what I do with people, is talking to people about getting to their inner self. And you call it your 100% self, how to be that 100% you. Can you talk to us in layman's terms about that and help people understand what being 100% yourself means?
Yes. A lot of what this originated, I studied martial arts, Shaolin Kung Fu to be exact. And once you go beyond about 6 years of the physical training, if you last that long, you actually start what's called internal martial arts. Internal martial arts is energy flow. The idea of...
Holy cow, I think Zoom just caught up to us.
That's right. So great. So when you start internal martial arts, you start being able to be energetically interactive. So if you think about physical fighting as a physical interaction, and so you start adding more dimensions to what's going on, okay? And one of those, very specifically, if we look at the human energy field, we say that a person should have like a 3-foot energy field, let's say, extends out to their fingertips. And so if you look at that, and you can look it up as clearly in photography or electromagnetic fields or auras, there's all this language. The basic thing is like a penumbra around a candle in a dark room. You actually see that photon field. And so we become interactive with that. And so instead of having, let's say, 36 volts, which is bad language, but because we're dealing with bioenergy in the human body, but that energy is supporting a field distance of, say, 3 feet. Well, we were taught 9 feet to begin with. So 9 foot became like a bubble, we'll call it. So if you have a 9-foot bubble or energy field, you tend to not get sick. You tend to have enough energy to support all 19 functions of the body, or 26, whichever number you want to use. And you tend to not age as fast. And your thinking tends to be a lot clearer. You don't get into things like brain fog and this, that, and the other. You recover very quickly. I mean, there's all kinds of benefits of having that big energy field. So to have that, I just decided, well, we'll just make the idea of it being a bubble. And But if we were on one of those Gaia stations, we'd call it a sphere being. I love that. So
sphere
if you think,
being.
so if you think, they talk about those as alien things, but humans are actually have a spherical form, we'll call it.
Right.
And that's a good way to deal with it, is just to look at a human being as if you have a 9-foot energy field. So we'll get into where 100% self comes in a minute, but so we look at that. But here's a training I had we wake up, let's say a normal person, if they exist, and let's say you slept through the night and you recharge your batteries and everything's fine. You would have about 36 volts, we'll call it, along your spine to power this system, right? This energetic system of being alive. And we were taught, well, you can have 40 volts. You can operate at a higher voltage. And then we were taught to operate off 100, and then 1,000, then 2,000, then 4,000. Oh. So once you learn that, you can't unlearn it.
Right.
So I would step in the ring with 4,000 volts, and like people wouldn't get in the ring with me. I mean, we're talking national champions right around the world. This is a long time ago, but they'd just walk up the ring and walk off. And then the other thing was, like, I started fighting in Chicago one day in a tournament at 9 o'clock in the morning. And at midnight, I'm still fighting. And all my teachers are like, what in the world is wrong with you? How are you able to do this? And I go, well, you just let that energy flow through you, right? You don't have to do anything once you attain that state through exercises and meditations and the weird practices you end up doing. And so then the other thing is you are influential with your energy field. So a person with a weak energy field is not as influential as somebody with a bigger energy field. So there's a issue of what's called hierarchical dominance, but it occurs not just through words or positionality of I'm your boss or something like that. It comes because of who has the bigger energy field. And now we get into how do we know that? A baby's born with about a 40 or 50 foot energy field. And so how do we know that? Because people want to pick them up and hold them and be around them and play them and buy them toys and feed them and take them all over the place. And of course, I always tell bad jokes. And when you get to be 21 as a female, you buy your own food, buy your own clothes, and take yourself to the movie by yourself. Mainly because you lost your energy field. That energy field shrank at that point, probably down to 3 feet or less. Now, what happens if it didn't shrink? We call you a charismatic. We call you Joel Osteen. Or we call you Madonna. Or you see what I mean? It's always somebody. And then we go, how do we know that? Because people want to be around you. And who are those people? Good. Who are those people? We call them energy vampires. I mean, I call them fans. We call them followers. Right. I mean, I'm
anybody who doesn't have that.
Right. Because they want to be around you because you have energy and they don't. So if you run, like I generally run a 30, 40 foot energy field, and it kind of pushes people out of the way and stuff. I have to tone it down a little bit, but because it's an imposition. It's somebody with a big energy field kind of like leaning on you, right?
And, well, now some people have that naturally, right? More so than the rest of us.
And we call that intrinsic. They're born with it.
Right.
And that's the thing about politicians, movie stars, all kinds of people. And they're born with it, and on that they tend to have maintained it through whatever reasons in the universe. But for the rest of us, we can learn that. They're very simple exercises. And of course, that gets into one book that I've written but not published called War Day, where I actually give the exercise to increase your energy field.
And can you tell us what that is, or is it a top secret?
Yeah, it's just a set of 5 exercises. It's just 5 little exercises you do in the morning, and they have the combined effect of making your energy field bigger. And the classic story, one of my clients, I'll talk about her, I have her permission, named Helen. She came to me at 81 years old, and she'd been married 6 times, had a dozen kids. I mean, this goes on forever, right, about what all she'd gone on in her life. and basically had no energy field. So I gave her the first exercise. And 1 month later, she came back and I go, hello. And she goes, hello. Because your voice changes when you're 100% yourself and you have energy, your voice changes. And so I go, what in the world have you been doing? Right? You have this energy field out like, 15 feet. This is an 81-year-old woman. And she said, I've been doing that exercise. And I go, you've been doing how long? She goes, I've been doing 11 minutes every day. And I go, are you crazy? Usually we start with 1 minute and then 3 minutes. And after a month or two, we build up. And finally we have to do where we can do 11 minutes. I've been doing 11 minutes every day.
Oh,
and
how funny.
So she's 84.5 now. I hope I got that right. She maintains about a 25-foot energy field. It's just,
and just from the one exercise?
Just from that one exercise. Well, I've worked with her too. I've worked with her. Gotcha. And this gets in the other part about how you be 100% yourself. I break the connections energetically. I'm able to break the connections from your ex-husbands, your pregnancies, your friends, your sister, your mom, everybody in the universe you've ever known, and plus some you don't know, right? And that's why we go through those categories when I work on a person. Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, psychic, psychological, etheric, astral, causal. It's like all of those are areas where you're active or interactive.
Right.
And you don't have a clue. So it's hard for you to be yourself.
Okay, I'm going to stop you because you talked about this exercise and people will be like, so what was the exercise? Can you share the exercise with us?
Yes, I will tell you what it is. Let me take a drink of water.
You can take a drink of water, absolutely.
The first exercise, and I give it to everything from children to 80-year-olds, obviously. Children love it. You lay on your back on the floor, if you can get down on the floor. One lady came to me, she couldn't get out of bed. And she goes, what can I do? And I go, well, I'll work on you, but you need to do this exercise. Just don't fall off the bed. She couldn't get out of bed. She's about 300 pounds and elderly. She walked in my office about 3 months later. She'd lost 100 pounds and just doing it in her bed. And she hadn't fallen off. So always say, start on the floor.
Right, stay safe. So
very carefully get yourself down on the floor if you can do that. You put your hands by your sides, okay, palms to your thighs or whatever, or you put your hands over your head, okay, whichever is less stressful on your body. Like with women, we say maybe down by your side or over your head because of the compression on the chest. So keep your eyes open. That's the other thing. And you're going to inhale deeply through your nose. And as you exhale, you're going to kick your feet. Your legs are together. And you kick your feet and you roll over. Now you're face down.
Oh.
Okay. And then remember, you exhale to get to that position. Now you're face down. And you inhale deeply. And as you exhale, you roll over. Now you're face up. And they call it log rolls. Okay. That is, all kids do it. Right?
Yeah.
And
little babies.
So watch this. In your bedroom or whatever, you can get maybe 2 or 3, or if you got a big room, or you can go outside and just keep going. And the effects are pretty immediate. Okay. You don't want to hurt yourself. It's always inhale and exhale. Exhale on the move. Inhale in a static position. Right. Keep your eyes open. When the exercise is over, sit up very carefully and just sit there for a minute. People skip this. And after you sit there for a minute, then you can get up. You don't want to stand up, jump up, answer the phone, or do any of that thing when you're doing this, because you may be kind of dizzy. Okay.
Right. Okay.
And the main injunction is when you're tired, you quit. So,
okay. So if it takes a minute, if it takes 3 minutes.
This is not a marathon or whatever. I gave a yoga class one time. There's about 60 people. There's a large room. And I said, I'm going to do this. I said, okay, everybody flat on your bellies or backs. I don't care which one you start, but we'll start on our back. And I want you to inhale, and I want you to log roll. Just use your feet and arms and kind of kick yourself over. And so everybody go, okay. And finally, somebody very intelligent goes, which way do we roll? And I go, whichever way you want to. Now there's like 6 or 8 rows of 6 or 8 people in a row. And at the end of 2 minutes, it was the most hysterical laughing going on. Pure joy. You see what I mean? Now, no matter what state those people were in when they came there, right? Pure joy erupted out of them because we all have that within us, okay? Right. And this is an exercise that not only creates energy, right? It charges the energy field, but it creates an opening for joy to express itself. Well, think about in the morning doing this and being able to go through the day in a joyful way. So
that's really good.
Now, as a martial art, this exercise is the beginning of a progressive exercise, and it becomes horrible about the 5th or 6th move.
So we'll just stay with the first part.
Yeah, we'll just stay with the first part. Yeah. Anybody that's going to train that way. I mean, I've made football players, martial artists, special forces, they start crying because they can't make it through the full 5-set exercise. And that's just the first one, right?
I'll have to talk to you about that part later. We'll see what that is.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Awesome.
You know, people like, oh, I'm tough, or I'm, strong, or whatever. And the reason these exercises are different, they work on the electromagnetic field and the nervous system. So weightlifting and being strong and all those kind of things don't have the same effect like with lifting weights. Will not necessarily strengthen your electromagnetic field or strengthen your nervous system. So
the act of rolling itself is what's strengthening the nervous system. I understand the connection there, but why does it strengthen your electromagnetic field?
Because how? Well, the mechanics of it are you have let's see if I can get this right. Give me a second. Sorry, I'm very thirsty tonight.
No, you're totally fine. Take your time. I'll just say while you're getting a drink real quick, if anybody that's on here wants to throw a question into the chat box, I am watching on another computer so I can catch your questions.
Okay. So you have electrical energy throughout the body. We store it in dense organs, cellular structures. I mean, it just goes on forever. Right. And we call that a state of dynamic tension. And dynamic tension means that the whole body is in a status of movement. All right. Now, when you go into a very relaxed position, all the energy that's accumulated in certain positions, like anger, normally associated with the lower back, sacral area, grief with the center of the chest, sadness with behind the. These are approximations of where blockages occur in the energy field. So when you do this rolling, it releases all that energy to be more or less homogeneous throughout the body. Wow. So you're no longer specifically tensing any particular part of the body. And because you're not doing that, it releases the energy into the energy field. Oh, nice. And nobody's ever asked me that. I always think that's, so thank you. Because
you're welcome.
Because I want to be able to explain, there's a science behind all this. Everything I talk about, I can explain scientifically. So
yeah, I try to do the same thing with all the stuff I do, and years in physiology and trying to understand. But we always ended up on the floor crawling. I never thought about doing the long rolls in the gym, or we would just end up crawling around and trying to increase our.
Well, let's see, like that cross crawling is right left brain balance, like people that have ADHD or ADD or extreme anxiety or depression. The same thing. Cross crawling can help rebalance the brain because of the motor control and the left hand side of the brain being interacted then. And that deals with blockages in the corpus callosum area of the brain. So, and those are easy to fix too, just so you know. Anxiety is just too much energy flowing up to this portion of the brain, and depression is too much here. And we say, well, how does that work? Too much energy. Well, very simple. If you over-energize certain areas of the brain or body, in this particular case, the brain, you develop and overproduce the neurochemistry we associate with the outcome called depression, or the outcome we call anxiety, right? And it's the same thing as having an overactive thyroid or overactive this, that, and the other in the body. So these things are able to be changed energetically, just like that. It takes almost no effort on my part, and it takes almost no effort on your part to not be depressed or anxious anymore.
Right. Yeah, when that energy is free flowing, it opens everything back up.
So that's the easy way. And then, you know, the way our society is, give me a pill. Aha, I got that covered too.
That's the hard way. Let's not do that. So what is the easiest path to the 100% yourself? I'm going to redirect you back towards that. I want everybody to understand this idea about being your, because a lot of you say be yourself and people automatically think who they think they are.
Right. Okay. We'll get in. Let me finish up on the energy field. The first layer of the energy field is about 2 inches for a normal person. And that first layer we call the etheric field. And when you lose your etheric field, you're going to get sick. It's just that simple. And there's lots of reasons for that happening. And a lot of them are what I call unique to you. So, but one of the things I do is in Native American medicine, I make up formulas for people that are having health issues. And one of them addressed this problem. And so I made up a formula, and it's an etheric formula. It actually increases the size of your etheric field from about 2 inches to about 14. And the product's called 3 Kings X etheric formula, 3kingsx.com, you can find it. Oh, wow. But you take one and it actually increases your energy field. And so for people who want a pill, skip all the learning and there you go. but it's better to do the rolling. Do you see what I mean? It's like, oh, I ain't going to roll. What, you can't take 3 minutes or 5 minutes, right?
I want the pill. That's what that equated to.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Now, so let's go back to 100% self. You existed prior to being in a physical body. That's your personality. That's who you are. And that gets into a whole big subject we're going to skip for right now. Okay. But when you're born, most generally, you're 100% yourself. Excuse me. I was working outside all day today and I kind of got dehydrated. So you're born, you're 100% yourself. When you get to be 2 years old, you're an ideal human being to me. And if you've ever tried to keep up with a 2-year-old, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Right. They have unlimited energy. They still have a 30-foot energy field. And I tell a story about, I was in my prime as a martial artist, and one of my little cousins said, here, you take care of my little 2-year-old today at the zoo. I chased that little girl for like 4 hours straight. And finally, I took her back to her mother and said, I can't do it. I can't keep up with her. And away she went again. I chased her all over that Jew, literally running. So we look at that. And the other thing is they're 100% themselves. They don't know that they're not them. It doesn't even occur to them. And so I learned that from a 4-year-old. One day I said to her, what's your name? I use that as an internet address for people. Like, we can tap into anybody on the planet. As long as you know them and have a first name, we can make that connection. So she said her name, and I said, no, it's not. And so I'd go, what's your name? And she'd say her name, and I go, no, it's not. And about the 3rd or 4th time, she launched on me. I mean, she comes screaming up off, and she's just wailing and beating the heck out of me, and I'm laying on the ground laughing. And her mother comes in and goes, what in the world's going on? And what had happened is I had challenged her identity.
Oh, wow.
Okay, right?
Yeah.
And that is a biggie. I mean, that gets into another whole subject, but we know who we are until we don't know anymore. And that happens around 6 years old when we introduce doubt and belief and programming and negative experiences and all the things that I go through when I work on a person.
Right.
So there you have when you lost it. And that's what, when we were talking earlier, one of the things about coming back to yourself or being 100% yourself is to get rid of that. And then people are like, well, how do you get rid of it? Well, it's not so much you get rid of it. It's like, tell me what you ate 3 months ago on a Tuesday. And you go, well, I don't know. And they go, and I go, you don't know because it's not important anymore. It never registered or hung up in your consciousness or your physical body anywhere or any of those other categories. And so it went away. So the same thing, you can have all these experiences, but as long as they're not holding energy. Remember that dynamic tension in the body? Right. So the rolling exercise is the first of, like, say, 5 little simple exercises. And what they do is change that dynamic tension into a release of the energy throughout the energy body and energy field. So there you go. So when I work on a person, I work on them to break those connections, to take the energy out of where it's at and let them have their own energy back. So,
and it brings them back to that 100% self.
Yeah, it brings them back to themselves. And then it's like, I mean, I worked on a lady today. It's like we're talking about 12-year breakup. We're talking financials. We're talking health issues. And it's like it just all goes away. She's perfectly happy at the end of it.
Now, let me ask you,
it.
Could you effectively take the idea of a 2-year-old and just project the 2-year-old and come to your 100% self?
Okay. So when we start, I ask your mom and dad's name because that's your genetic makeup. And these are things that nobody ever explained in high school or even college. You reach completion of your physical self around 18 to 19 years old. And what that means is the dynamics of the DNA from your mom and dad come together, integrate, synchronize, and become congruent and lock up. Okay? And that's your physical body. And we don't mark it any particular way of like, I made it this far or hallelujah or something. But when we look at that, we go, okay, that's completion of your physical body. How about your mental body? Well, mental is relationships. And, you know, teenagers are notorious for being deficient in that area, right? Including me. And so we say, well, maybe by 25, right? Excuse me.
Everybody take a drink of water.
Yeah, I get wound up. So around 25, we say the emotional body comes into some sort of status. Mental, physical, emotional. Good luck with that one. So, and I'll explain that in a minute. But, you know, mental body, emotional body, spiritual body, spiritual, now we're talking 60, 70, 80, living on a mountain, you know, it's like we have all this information and none of it is necessarily true for you. That's the problem, okay? So we either unlearn it, which is we can't do. That's bad language. All these people, you need to unlearn something. No, you need to take the energy out, retain the memory, and have it accessible to you if it is something that is valuable,
right,
or appropriate for your survival. So there.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, where was I going with that? Anyway.
We were in a cave for a second.
Oh yeah. Well, when you look at all those, oh, I know what I was going to say. So everybody has following problems. They've had physical abuse, they've had mental abuse, they've had emotional abuse, and quite a few of them have had spiritual, we call spiritual or psychic abuse.
Yeah.
The human body in 6 months will basically heal any injury. sometimes up to a year, but no matter what happens to you, phantom limb, I mean, anything goes on, the body will readjust, adapting or adopting. Now, mental abuse, that comes from relationship, mom, dad, husbands, children, whatever. Well, that keeps you in business, doesn't it?
Hardcore, it
Yeah,
does.
all psychologists, all psychiatrists, all what I refer to as talk therapy is an attempt to undo the charge that has been developed.
Well, and that becomes our identity too, right?
Yeah,
like that's
yes,
what we...
yeah. And we go to Maslow and hinge point psychology and hierarchical needs, and the whole thing gets wrapped into it. And I call it orbiting, okay? Somebody comes up and they go, well, I go, what's going on? They go, well, I got a divorce. And I go, when that happened, they go, like 21 years ago. And of course, you know, then we go into slap therapy 3 or 4 times. Let's try that again.
Up.
Yeah, because they're just orbiting around this one event, kind of like our election in the last day or two. So,
yes.
And we won't get into that. So now,
no.
So we go 6 months, right? 6 months of therapy, maybe just for one issue, one person. I just break all those contacts because we don't need them anymore. You can reestablish them. But so now we go to physical, mental, now we go to emotional. Oh my goodness. You would not believe how much effect an emotional abuse has on a person. We may be talking years of therapy to get over it. All right. Remember the 3-year-old or 4-year-old, I was denying her existence as a person, right? And to deny somebody's existence is one of the most horrible things to do to a person. We call it being ignored. So now we have a lot of behavior issues that come out of that. And not to talk about our election again, but anyway, and candidates, but
you know, you said something, let me stop you for 2 seconds. Yeah. You said something a second ago about adopting or adapting. And we were talking before and applying it to the election idea, which I just thought was an absolutely amazing, like no matter who wins, you either adopt or adapt.
Right. And it's the same thing with COVID and the same thing with every problem that occurs in human life.
Yeah.
You either adopt the new position in relationship to everything going on or to a specific event, or you adapt to it, which means you retain yourself. And that's the difference. When you retain your own identity through all these problems you're having, you're still you. But if you adopt it, you adopt yourself, meaning you submit or subsume your consciousness to another person or place or an idea. And like I said, we get in that one of our other questions if we ever get there. So we go to emotional abuse. Emotional abuse, we may take 3 or 4 years to get somebody out of that. And I would rather just blank it out and not have to deal with it anymore, because that's what it amounts to. So now physical, mental, emotional, how about psychic abuse, spiritual abuse, right? It's like we may be taking lifetimes. You may actually have a karmic pattern that develops out of it. And that was one of the things the lady I was working with today, her boyfriend's a bazillionaire or something. And so I go, just as I was working on her, but I took a quick look and I go, this is what you're dealing with. And so I gave her the 2 or 3 things that were going on with her boyfriend or whatever. And I said, unless you resolve these with this person, you're always going to be in continual conflict with it, right? So it has nothing to do with you. It just has to do with the situation. And of course, that's where we either adopt to it or adapt to it. We can adopt to the idea and go ahead and be in a position of being compromised or hurt.
Right.
Or we can adapt to it where we acknowledge that that's what's going on, but we decide to be there anyway. We decide to be helpful or in some way try to advance the whole thing, the whole situation, our whole life. So does that make sense?
And that's where, it totally does. And that's where you stay your 100% self, or as I would say,
you stay yourself.
In your spirit, and then all of your perception of all that stuff alters anyway. Right. Yeah.
I was at I'm not allowed to go to dinner parties.
I've heard.
Yeah, I'm too observant or something. one lady was there and she was talking at one of them, and I went like this. I leaned forward because she was talking. And what I was doing is, of course, interrogating her information field. And at one point, I stopped and then leaned back. Okay. And the host, who was a sensitive type person, afterwards said, I saw what you did to that girl. And I go, what? What did I do? And she goes, well, you leaned all in. And I go, yeah, I was interested in what she was saying, but then I was looking at what was behind all of it. And once I had satisfied the information I needed, I leaned back out. She goes, that's very rude. And the language is, it's called the negation of the self. And that's what it, with a 4-year-old, and now with the people that, you know, that divorce you or fire you, you're dealing with a negation of the self, and it's very painful. But it's painful at a level that people are not interactive with. They don't know how to get in there and change it. Right. And really, that's all we want to do. So negation of the self becomes a big issue in our life. And we get to see it over and over until you become 100% yourself and you're able to maintain it, and then it doesn't bother you. Okay. And so that becomes the operant words. It doesn't bother you anymore. Right.
No, and it's an interesting way to live when you can get to that place where you're, and I wouldn't say I'm there all the time, but I'm there more often than not, especially the last number of years.
Well, if you become totally uninvolved, then you have to fake it.
Well, and that would be kind of the idea of living in the cave, right? Where you've sat in there and you just have no involvement with the outside world. And we don't want to do that either. We want to stay engaged.
No, you were not put on this planet to live in a cave. You were not put on this planet to ascend. I mean, we'll skip that conversation too, about ascension and all this other stuff that goes along with that. You were put here to be yourself. That's my basic understanding of studying humanity and working on 40 or 50,000 people in the last 40 or 50 years, is that you are meant to be yourself. And the reason I can work on a person, it took me 2 years to figure this out, by the way, is that I'm non-judgmental about who you are. I just want you to be 100% yourself, 100% available, have a minimum of energetic inputs and at least 30 to 40 volts of energy. And I will tell you, if you run 40 to 100 volts all the time, you will run circles around everybody. They can't keep up with you. Your creativity is off the scale, and you're just hard to live with. And that's what people find out about me. So,
well, and I just want to say, I don't know if you mind me disclosing your age, but you're 70 years old.
71 next week.
71 next. I will give you the 71. And I was cracking up because I was going back through a bunch of old videos and everything, getting ready for this. And I'm looking at all these pictures, and I saw a picture of Emery Smith and you sitting together and throughout the ages. And he was super, super young, and you still look like you. Like all of this time, you just still look like, and I'm like, how do you do that? But this is how you do that.
Yes. One of the things that happens when you run over 40 volts is the aging process slows down. And I've demonstrated with, I used to take students, and you'd have to be very wealthy right now for me to be able to afford the time. But once you learn these techniques and stuff, you just don't age anymore. And certainly at a slower rate than everybody else around you. So if we look at that as overall, we just say very simple. Lack of energy equals accelerated aging. And everybody wants to give you all kinds of things to keep you from aging. And the answer is to have more energy slows those processes down, right?
That's the easy way. All right, let me scoot into a next question here, just because I'm not doing this very well. I'm too busy listening to you. I'm just like totally entrained here. So I'm thinking about the like COVID is just a good example of this, and all the mask wearing, and you have to stay 6 feet apart, and all the things that they're telling us. We're just not interacting with each other, but we don't usually interact with our environment and our natural surroundings very well either, I don't believe.
No.
How does that affect us as a consciousness? Right? As a whole.
If you've ever, I was raised in the wild. I'll just put it that way. It shocks people if I revert back to the language of Harjo, Oklahoma, and living out in the woods, right? I literally, at 3 or 4 months at a time, we would live on riverbanks or on lake shores around anytime my dad didn't have work. Well, we would live out in the woods, and we would fish and hunt, and we had food that way. And so I grew up thinking that was normal. And then, of course, when I finally hit school and being around people around 12 or 13, when your social identity kicks in, it's like I realized that, you need better clothes and not be such a wild child, and and literally change your language, right? So I had to change my language. So being out in the woods, like you can take anybody that's grew up in cities, and you take them out a couple miles out in the woods, and like immediately your energy field expands. Okay, so that's why the first martial art I teach is awareness. And like I say, I've taught special forces stuff, and this is how we start. And so your awareness expands automatically, but it's kind of like it's become atrophied. Okay, right. You don't need those kind of sensory extension generally in the city. You lose it. Okay, so the first thing that happens, you live in a house. Remember, I slept on the ground, literally. And I've had the centipede bites, snake bites, scorpion bites, and every other thing that creeps and crawls. I can show you all of them. and it's like, that was just the way we lived. I didn't know that was not good or would be grounds for child abuse or something. I don't know, right?
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, because we didn't go to the doctors. You got bit or stung. Oh, well, that's just the way it is. You'll die or you won't, right? So.
Oh my goodness.
So it was sort of an anomaly, a time warp back in the 50s where I grew up and stuff.
Right.
And so we look at all that, and just a second. That reality of being out in the woods is engagement of the physical world, right? With all of your senses. That's it. So we'll take that as like 1950, let's say.
Okay.
Now, we do not engage the world with our physical senses to any great degree anymore. Mm-mm. And we can put a timeline on it. We can put a graph on it. We can measure it by percentages and this, that, and the other. So what we have is an atrophy taking place in our physical senses, our hearing, all right, our touch, our taste. I mean, everything starts going haywire. Now, if you maintain that big energy field, that's not true. You become actually super sensitive to things, and it always amazes people. Like, say I'm 71 or something, but my color perception, visual acuity that way, taste. I mean, I can taste. I make formulas, so I can tell just the least little part, per million or whatever. And I've had a lot of damage from fighting, like my hearing. But occasionally, if I engage, I can hear clear across the street or clear across the block or whatever. Wow. So those senses are still there. It's just that we haven't developed them.
Right.
Okay.
So
and in Native American way of life, we were physically engaged we were engaged with all our senses with our environment. And now we're divorced from our environment. We live in a room, a bedroom, one room at a time, or
right.
All these
and now
things.
Even more so with the masks and the distancing and the and
now,
the internet
a mask falls in the category of negation of the self. We fail to be recognized, and that's another prime driver in human relationships. So you may die of COVID, and I have my own opinions about that, and as to the veracity of it or its existence. But anyway, that's a long story. I just happen to have a cover photo from 1966 Life magazine that shows a coronavirus on the cover.
Really?
Yeah. And I mean, I have that, and you can go find it if you do that kind of research.
Google it.
But but the negation of the self may be more damaged psychologically and to your existence than actually dying of a disease. And the reason I say that, because like we had talked about your brother, if I can bring that up. Or
yeah, absolutely.
And like me, I died about 7 times a couple of years ago. And I have no experience of it. I have the experience of being dead. and I would say the same thing maybe your brother said, and it's no big deal. Okay, we have fear involved in it. Yeah. And so we'll talk about fear as the operative condition of what's going on right now. So if we demonstrate fear by wearing a mask or wearing a hoodie or, wearing a gun, I mean, there's all kinds of ways where we demonstrate fear, right? But fear as an emotional state is very degrading. It's degrading of the physical environment, mental environment, emotional environment. I mean, we go down the list.
Everything.
And so Michael Crichton wrote a book, State of Fear, and deals with global warming. And I tell people, just read the epilogue, right? Because if you take the psychological program that's going on right now and the social engineering that's going on, and for people that don't believe any of that, you don't need to, okay? You just need to decide if you're going to wear a mask or not.
Right.
And I tell people, if you're going to wear one, be happy about it. If you're not going to wear one, be happy about it. Right? because here's the rule. We're all going to die anyway. And then you're supposed to laugh at that and go, so what? Right? In other words, you need to lead your life the way you want to lead your life. The only way you can do that is to be 100% yourself. Otherwise, you're leading somebody else's life or somebody else's rules or somebody else's whatever.
Right.
Now, 6 feet's interesting because there's no more energetic field interaction. There's no more communication between people when there's a 6 feet separation, and that's against God, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. Right. And I'm sure they knew that when they established that.
Right. And so we look at human beings are supposed to interact with other human beings. That's the rule.
Yes.
So when you're deprived of that, we know that with children, if they're not handled when they're very little babies, they develop all kinds of psychosis and issues. And right now we can't touch, no kissy, no huggy, no whatever that rest of that song is.
Right? I don't even know what that song is.
I tell people, if you listen to country and western music, you'd already know everything I've talked about. So
you would be totally fine.
It's a country and western song. So
now
people look it up.
You had said something before we had even started. We were chatting before this, and you used the phrase, so what, now what, then what? Mm-hmm. And relating it to this whole idea of having to wear a mask or not.
This is 3-minute psychotherapy. Okay.
Yes. It's the best.
All problems can be resolved in 3 minutes.
Right here.
Okay. Now, this is where I get the opportunity to do slap therapy too, by the way. So
I'll keep my 6 feet.
Yeah. So here's the deal. What's your problem? Pick one. I mean, you divorced or you got sick or whatever, or the election. Just pick one out, and I'll show you how it works.
Let's use the election because that gets a lot of people. I mean, people are up in arms about this. No matter what side you're on, people are up in arms.
Okay, so let's deal with it. Trump got elected. Biden got elected. Okay. The object doesn't make any difference. Okay, so we're gonna circle around and come back to this. I love you. I love is the operating statement. You is the object. That's back to that Okie language of mine, right? So if you is the object, there is no object in this statement. I love is the only thing that matters in it. I love you. You love me. I love Biden. I love Trump. But I'm in a loving state, meaning I'm in a state of consciousness where energy is flowing out of me in that frequency. That's it.
Nice.
I don't love you. That's a negation of that. We call it the opposite or reciprocal. Right. It's the same thing. It doesn't have an object. It doesn't need one. because all you're describing is your own state of consciousness. Okay. So here we go. Trump won, Biden won. So what? Right? And this is where people go, well, blah, blah, blah,
the
blah.
deep end.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. They're going to give you everything they think, right? And even worse, everything they feel, or even better, everything they feel, depending on what we're talking about. And so we go, so what? And after they run down, right, you go, well, is there anything else in that so what deal? Well, it matters because we're all going to die. We're back to that again. All right. And that's the logical end of all fears, by the way. There's only one fear, and that is death. And so we say, if you're not dead, then you don't need to be fearful. If you are dead, you can't be fearful. So who cares? So now we go to, right? So now we go to, so what? So once you work through so what, and they wind down and wind yourself down because you've been wound up, you're spending all your energy by radiating all this either anger or fear or love or joy. I don't know which one you're in. But then you go, then what? So Trump got elected, then what? I mean, the question I ask you, how many presidents have you lived under? And like me, I don't know, it's 10 or 12 or 20 something.
Right.
And so am I materially different than as by having lived under each of those presidents? And the answer is no. Okay. Because I'm still myself. But if you get enraged, I can tell you you're not yourself. That's it. Right.
Right.
So we go, then what? Well, Biden gets elected and takes all the guns and we all live in poverty and in FEMA camps and blah, blah. I mean, just make up stuff. I'm sorry. Trump gets elected and we all live in FEMA camps. Just make it all up. So what you're going to do is you're going to take an information field, and I call it a preference set. This gets into my, book. The first book on the exercise is called War Day, by the way. I have it written. I have not published it. I'm trying to figure that out.
You keep talking about the books, and there's no books.
Okay. So no, there is a book. It's just not published.
It's just not here yet.
The second book I've been working on for a long time is called Theory of Proxima Reality. Okay. And what that means is your reality only extends as far as you reach, and without getting into all that. But then what becomes like, how far do you reach into your reality and say this and this and this? Now, everything you say on then what is not true. Because it's a projection. It's a projection of the future, right? And so it's actually an aspect of anxiety or fear, right? Which is the same thing. Fear and anxiety are the same thing, right? So now, then what? Well, we're all going to die. Remember, something's going to happen, and then the ultimate outcome of that is that we die. So now, if we get beyond that, finally get the person calmed down, then we go, now what? And this is the thing. Since Trump's been elected, I've led my life. Since Obama got elected, I've led my life. Since Bush, you see what I mean?
Yeah, regardless.
Because I adapted to the new situation and maintained being myself, right? Now, most people cannot move beyond, so what? They get mad. They slap you. That's the slap therapy. Yeah. Oh my God, blah, blah, blah. And you go, so what? Whack, right? That's how much energy they have bound up that is not available to their energy system or to their functioning of their metabolic functions or their neurochemical production. I mean, we can go on forever. And then we don't understand that 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 years later, we have a problem. We have an illness.
Right.
So
there it locks in your system.
Yeah.
So we either have to run them through this, so what, now what, then what, or knock them down and make them log roll.
Yeah. So what, then what, now what? Now, what's interesting, so what, then what, now what becomes a way to intellectually deal with reality. And physical reality is easier to deal with. Go jump, cold showers, we started this back in the 70s. It's an Ayurvedic thing. Yeah. And then William Hoff comes up and goes, cold showers. And all of a sudden it's a million movement, and he's a bazillionaire. And I go, you know, we were doing 58-degree water in Monterey at 3:45 in the morning for 15 minutes, right? Because after the screaming stops, that's you screaming because of the cold water.
Because it's cold, yeah.
You are going to be yourself. This is the other thing. You don't need, in my opinion, you don't need to go to gurus. You don't need to go to all these people. But you can come to me and give me your money if you want to. But anyway, that's the commercial. But here's the thing. If you step into a cold shower, I promise you're going to scream, especially at 3:45 in the morning. And what happens is your nervous system is thrown into shock. And when it's thrown into shock, guess what? It stops thinking. Okay.
Oh, wow.
It absolutely stops thinking. Now, or you can sign up for $1 million for my meditation course, and I'll try to teach you that, or I can just throw you into a cold shower at 3:45 in the morning. It's the same outcome. So you see all these people come up with all these things that you need to do, and it's not true. When you can do them to yourself, cold shower, rolling around, all these things. So now what happens? Why the cold shower? Number one, all thinking stops. And believe me, you can find out tomorrow if you want to try it.
I've actually done it before. I've done the cryotherapy, get in the tank and they blast you with the, yeah.
Well, I did it for years. I lived in an ashram, and that was just normal behavior. But the other thing that happens, within 3 minutes, your energy field and the electromagnetic energy flow through the body should stabilize. And what that means is you should come into a position of the body heating up on its own. If you don't attain that state in 3 minutes, you need to stop and turn the warm water on. I gave it to one gentleman in his 50s, all kinds of health issues. And I said, look, I'm not around. I just met these people. And I looked at him and I said, I want you to do this. It took him almost 6 weeks before his body would come up to temperature. All his illnesses and problems went away that way. He was still crazy, but that's another subject. And that's a clinical term for anybody out there. Everybody's crazy, but insanity is painful to yourself or others. So we can all be crazy, but not insane. You're not supposed to hurt yourself or hurt other people. Right. So anyway, if your energy field and your electromagnetic system come into balance after into 3 minutes, then you can go ahead and shower with warm water, hot water, whatever. But it is a test. It's also an exercise. And I don't recommend it because as far as like on an interview like this, because there's some caveats. And the basic caveat, just so you know, is do the hokey pokey. Okay.
All the time. I was going to ask you, because I've known people who played with this idea and they were already in such high levels of fight and flight, stepping into that water just increased everything.
Oh God,
yeah. Already so out of balance, and they didn't prepare
they should
themselves.
Scream. Yeah. Well, that's the hokey pokey. Do you know the hokey pokey?
Well, you put the right arm in and the right arm out.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And the left arm
out. You can see it for people that go to the ocean. They stick a foot in, or
stick a foot. Yeah.
Anyway, ease yourself in, and of course we were crazy. We would just step right in, and like people would scream at 3:45 in the morning. The ocean, you hear all these people screaming.
Gosh!
And of course, if you have anger in your body or anger in your mind or whatever, oh my God, you come out of there, you can't even hardly look at people. You're so mad, right? But you know what happens after a while? It just all goes away, right?
Because everything comes back into balance.
Yes, and you become, and the language is, and the same thing with having a big energy field, you become radiant, right? Am I flushed right now? Can you tell?
Bit. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all the energy. Because I'm excited, and that's the way it should be. And so, if you get excited and you're not radiating energy, you need to call me. Because you got some serious health issues. Yes. So these are the kind of things that put us back in touch. You know, rolling is a physical exercise. The cold shower is a physical exercise, and it re-engages all your senses. And the ones past this are even worse. So,
when I would say
when I do training,
with these few things, with what you're just now talking about, and where the question I asked was about the environment and natural surroundings and how we're not interacting to get through this period of time. This could be good stuff just to be doing to keep ourselves engaged and our energy field big and healthy.
So our reference set has changed. This is set theory in my Proxima Reality book that hadn't been written yet. So we have a reference set. We have one we're born with, and then we have acquired information, right? And that is all environmental. It's all proximate. It's all around you. It's close to you. And then within it, we have a preference set. So somebody who's mad, angry, has a preference to be angry within their reference set. And what that means, their reference set defines how far they can go with it. And so now we can see the limitations or the boundaries of every kind of action that's going on. And of course, I look and determine all of it, even in the past, right? And so when we look at reference sets, preference sets, and there's 3 others in that whole group, but we can start defining what actually is going on with a person, right? Mm-hmm. So back to the election real quick, it's like, if you're angry, you have a preference for being angry as an expression of your energy for what's happening around you.
Right.
And it's like, wow, how come nobody ever told me that? Maybe I could take a look at that. Maybe I could make some adjustments.
Right, and then change it.
So,
right.
So
with all of that, what you've just talked about, talk about the disclosure a little bit. What are your thoughts?
Oh, okay. Well,
where are we heading? Yeah, take another drink. And I know I know it's a loaded gun, but it's okay. I think we'll be all right with it.
Well, let me finish on that. The thing to be out in like a Native American lifestyle up into the 1800s or 1900s, let's say, was all physical reality. And the outcome of that was spiritual reality. So now we have a non-physical reality. We don't move, we don't do things, we don't engage, we're 6 feet apart, we don't touch, all these things. And we're moving into a virtual reality. And I wanted to finish that with, let me see. So just so you know what you're dealing with on a daily basis, you have a common reality, a shared reality, a conscious reality, a subconscious reality, an unconscious reality, and an unknown reality. And those represent the first set of categories in our reference sets that we deal with. And all of those have shifted. They're not the same as they were in 1900 or in 2000 even. Right. And so there's this acceleration of separation is what it's called. And the ultimate outcome is what we call homogeneity in humans. So that's a whole other subject we get off into. So anyway, I'm done with that subject. Go ahead. Oh, disclosure.
Well, yeah. Where are we headed? And especially after this election, it's hard to tell, I'm sure, but read into it for us a little bit.
We're talking about alien or
everything, any of it, all of it. We talk about all this stuff. So yeah, we're in alignment with what you're doing here.
Here's the problem: is there's lots of information that has been developed and is being developed. We're adding new chemical compounds at the rate of several hundred a day. There's no telling what DARPA's doing.
Right. Yeah.
That's a joke. Not really. And anyway, so if you think about the amount of information available, and I can't remember the word for it. I had it written down. The amount of data available goes into, forget pentaflops, it goes into some trillions to whatever power number of data points. And so we're in a data dense ocean, we'll call it. And one of the things I do, if somebody, and not to mention names, maybe one of them start with a C. If somebody relates to you, they were on the planet Mars, if there's not enough data density behind that statement, which we can interrogate for, it's not true. Okay. Now, but it may be true in their own consciousness. It's just, it's not true in this reality. So here we go. There's a lot of information that's been developed, like Vedic literature. There's no telling what all's in there, because I've studied it for 30 or 40 years, and I consider myself like on page 1, right? But there are secrets, but they're not lost because they're part of the overall information field, or we'll just call it the field.
Right.
And so Lynn Taggart wrote a beautiful book called The Field. It's part of your education if you study with me. And then we go to Rupert Sheldrake on morphic fields. And so if we think about the overall information field, or the universe, whatever you want to call it, but then there's like subsystems, we'll call them morphic fields, that you operate on. Together with all white people, or all tall people, or all Native Americans, or all people over 50. These are all subsets, okay, to the set theory I have. And so these are all operant in your consciousness, and you have no clue what they are or where they came from. So the idea of coming back to 100% yourself is you get to choose. So what, then what, now what? And ultimately it's so what, then what, now what. You end up at a point of choosing. I choose to wear a mask. I choose to vote for Trump. I choose to vote for Biden. And at that point, you don't have to justify, apologize, emphasize. You don't have to explain yourself. It's just my choice, in the same way that I want milk in my coffee or I don't, right? Right. It becomes absolutely personal because it comes from the truth of being yourself. And once you have the truth of being yourself as an expression, it's unarguable, okay? That's a beautiful thing, right?
That is a beautiful thing.
Right.
And it's an easier way to live, no matter what is going on around us. Guess
what? You don't tense up so much.
Yeah.
Then you have more energy available. Then you tend to not age so much. We're back to that again. So
it's a huge, amazing circle. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, we're after an hour here. I hate to keep holding you up, but I do have one more question. It's the first question I ever asked you.
Wait.
Oh, go ahead.
I like to finish things. Gaia never let me finish things, in my opinion.
Oh.
But please watch my shows.
Yes, do that, please.
So, let's see. Just a second. A lot of that information, like we talked about disclosure, whether it's aliens or secret societies, that information's available if you put yourself or train yourself in a position to go look for the information. You don't need to go to them. There are no secrets in the universe. Everybody comes out with it's a secret or what. It's not true, right? Anybody can find that information. So that's disclosure. You don't have to wait on anybody. Right.
And you know, it takes all the fear out of it when you realize the information is out there. You just have to go.
And it's available across time and space, meaning, and remember, they're aspected, so you can interrogate for that. For any time period, any person, any event, you can actually become accurate in your observations. So there. Next question. What was the one you asked me first?
Well, I'm going to have to come back to that because I know this is going to come up. One particular person I know is going to ask me this. So if anything is accessible, you can go get this information, right? It's all out there. None of it's a secret. None of it's hidden. None of it's it's there. What happens when you go and you get information, or you think you got information, but it doesn't seem to be the information you thought you got? And now you're saying, oh, that was wrong. Like, this isn't the information.
Okay. So one of the outcomes of being yourself is to escape the idea of duality.
Yes.
Okay. And so one of my episodes I call it duality of reality. And the way out of it is to be neutral. And they don't teach that.
Right.
Never in school were you were taught positive and negative. You're taught plus or minus. You're taught all these things, but neutral doesn't exist. So what happens if Trump gets elected or Biden gets elected? Neutral.
So what?
So what? I don't care. And it's like, and the other triangle in that one is carefree, careless, and careful. I don't want to be careful about it. I don't want to be careless. Carefree about it. Let's see. Careless or careful, I want to be carefree. Carefree is to be neutral. It's going to rain tomorrow. Like with me, people,
See, that
is
makes
it going
me
to rain
excited.
tomorrow? Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't care if
love
it
it.
rains tomorrow. All I do is stick my head out the door and see what clothes I need to wear. Right. So that becomes, again, where you lose having an opinion and wanting to be right. And so the biggest impediment to somebody trying to engage in information seeking at this order is it's that you're invested in the outcome. You want to be right. And what we see with all the friction in the election is everybody wants to be right. Nobody wants to be truthful. That's my opinion. So if you take being right out of it and you were absolutely yourself and absolutely neutral, now you have the ability to interrogate the field for information because you just want to know the truth of it. Right. And if you can't be neutral, you can't come to a point of being able to discern the truth. And that's another primary thing I teach people. Because once you can discern the truth about yourself and life, you're home free as far as your life is concerned.
You win at that point.
You from here on out, I promise you'll have the greatest time in your life about being on this planet. So
wow.
Okay.
That's the best answer I think I've ever heard to that, because people will go into the field to get their answers and come back going, wait a minute.
If you're invested in the answer, then you're going to be right or wrong.
Yep.
But if you're not invested and strictly out of a matter of pure consciousness, curiosity, whatever the answer is. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You're awesome. All right. My last question.
Yes.
And this is the first question I ever asked you. And I think I got an answer to it, but I still haven't figured out how to do it. Time dislocation.
Okay.
I want to figure out how to, and I've done it a few times where it's just like, and sometimes just little tiny bits, and other times I've gone hundreds of miles, but I can't make it happen consistently.
Okay. So the problem occurred, you remember, I love all these quantum physicists and physicists out there.
Yep.
I have a love affair going with all of them. Bill Tiller, Michio Maku, Russell Targ. I mean, some of these guys were my heroes when I was young, but like now I just love to kind of pick on them, if that makes any sense. So,
as long as you're enjoying it.
Yeah, it's a character fault or my fault. I mean, on my part. But anyway, because I want them to advance themselves beyond what's being taught. Our colleges teach what I call third or fourth order physics, and DARPA is up to level 15. Like, everybody needs to grow up and learn a new level of physics, and that's why I enjoy myself so much picking on them. But anyway, so what I came up with back in the 80s was the idea that time and space were both aspected. And what that means is they had things going on about them that could be defined. So time could be fast or slow. We know this. Right. We experience. So time being fast or slow becomes experiential. Well, if it's experiential, then, and by the way, all science throws out experiential data. So everything we've talked about is unprovable scientifically, except that I can prove it scientifically. So they
don't want to hear it.
No. They don't want to hear it. So anyway, if it's aspected, that means you can like delineate it into parts. So if we take movement through space, and I won't get into whether that's true or not. Let's say I went through eight parts of space, okay? And that's the way I laid it out. Now, this comes from Telstar, 1962 or 61, 59, somewhere back in there. I was, it had to be 62 or 63 because I was doing laser physics. But anyway, Telstar, they came out with a satellite, Telstar. And Bell Labs said, what we're doing is, rather than send all the data, like in a voice call, for instance, we would take little pieces out. And what the effect was compression. We would compress the data. And so we take out enough parts, like right now, you're hearing my voice, but you're not hearing all of it. Right. Think about pixels on a camera. we used to have grains because it was physical, but now we have pixels, and they were 100 pixel, 300, 1,000. I mean, there's no telling where they're at now. Hundreds of thousands of pixels. So if you you can take out hundreds of thousands of them and still have a picture. And so what they did is like, where do we degrade it to the point where you can't hear the voice anymore? Okay. And I looked at that and went, wow, data compression. Okay. So later I should have been rich over that one because I was 13 years old when I come over that one. So anyway, I went data compression. Well, we could do that, with our voice. And then I got to thinking, well, what if I did the same thing in space where I had data compression, where I got rid of 1 or 2 or 3 of those aspects of space? I wouldn't have to travel through all of space to get to where I want to go.
Right.
So I put that theory in effect when, let's see, 25 years ago. So what that? Yeah. So about 1995, I decided to drive to Shreveport, Louisiana to see my daughter from Oklahoma. And it took me 4 hours. I left at 7:15 and got there at 11:13. All right, driving. Right, 400
From
miles.
Oklahoma to Shreveport.
From Oklahoma to Shreveport is 400 miles. Go to Dallas, hang a left, and go to Shreveport. Now, when I came back a few days later, I didn't do what I did, and it took me the standard about 8 hours to drive that. Anybody's driven it. What did I do? I decided I would not go through all of those spatial aspects. I would kick 2 or 3 of them out. Okay. And I was able to do that. All right. Now, the technique involved, I tell people, later, I actually developed up a little electronic thing with some friends of mine, another physicist and a what do you call electrical engineer. And we figured out we could make a little toy that you could set on your dash, and through algorithm and data compression and through spatial compression, be able to influence the field you're traveling through, eliminate 3 or 4 dimensions, and away you go. You get about 35% gain in time, right? The most I've gotten is about 50%, but well, consciously.
Right.
Now, I've done like you done. I've been driving along, then I was 100 miles down the road 2 minutes later. And I've done that a lot. But it requires you to be yourself. It requires you to be neutral. And it requires you to learn a few techniques that I teach, okay?
Right.
So that's spatial compression, where you're not traveling through those spaces, the total number of spaces. Well, the same thing's true on what we call portals. Like there's one in New Mexico I talk about. And, the the extent of the space you're traveling through is not the same. That's the easy way to look at it. Okay. And then time is aspected 19 parts, space 8 in my system, right? But now it gets really crazy. We have reciprocals so we have space this way, space as a reciprocal, and then we have the reciprocal of the first one and the reciprocal of the negative. And then we do the same thing on time. So then you have 90-degree shifts, and this gets into a whole physics that nobody, including DARPA and DOD and everybody else, wants to talk to me about. So.
But it has to be some kind of simple, because even on the Disclosure show there, Emery Smith actually said sometimes it takes him 2 minutes to get himself into the space where all of a sudden he can move himself along. So I'm sitting there paying attention to this guy, okay, because I've had it happen, but I've never been conscious that I was actively doing anything to cause it.
Okay. So here's the rule behind it, we could say.
The rule. We need a rule.
You ready?
Yes.
There is no there.
To get to, and I caught that part of it.
Yeah. There is only here.
Right.
If I drive from here to Dallas, I've driven from here to here. Like when I'm in Dallas, I'm here.
Right.
And I'm not anywhere else. But one of the things in quantum physics is very interesting, that when I go to, like, let's say I go to Dallas tomorrow. When I leave here, I'm at 100% in Oklahoma, let's say, or DC, wherever I'm at.
Right.
And then at some point along the timeline, I'm more in Dallas than I am for the location I'm at. Okay.
Right.
So by spatial and temporal GPS points are divergent. It's that simple. I'm at 40 miles down the road instead of being, we'll just use 100%. I'm 10% down the road, but I'm 40% in Dallas already.
Right.
Right. So what we're doing is following that timeline or spatial pathway, and it literally becomes a pathway and gets into how you travel these pathways, and that would be a whole movie or book to do, but it'd take a long time to discuss it. But that's what's happening. As soon as you put your consciousness on it, you are already there to some extent. And when you practice it, you get more and more there than you are here. And that's that instantaneous travel that goes on.
And that's when it just happens.
Yeah. And one of my physicist friends, he used to argue, he said, well, you violated the laws of thermodynamics. And I said, not only did I do that, I took my car with me.
Right. And thank goodness. Yeah.
So there's remember that bubble. I'm not transferring me. I'm transferring my whole environment out to some point. And I mean, literally, I have blinked, and then one blink later be 100 miles down the road.
Yeah.
And so once you know it's possible, you can become proficient at it. It's one of those things until you knew a 4-minute mile could be run, and then everybody runs it. But until you do it the first time. So I did this, and Dr. David Hawkins and I talked about it, and he talked about it in one of the lectures that he had done that. And I go, yeah, it's something that is, that can be taught or experienced. And so my physicist friend that would argue with me on all the physics, I said, okay, I'm going to teach you how to do it. He drove from Oklahoma City to Denver. It's a 10-hour drive. And on the way back, it took him 5.5 hours. And he said, okay, he goes, it works. But he said, I have a headache and I'm not going to do it anymore. And I go, you weren't holding your mouth right. So that's remember country and Western music. It's kind of a joke, but anyway.
Okay, I was saying, okay, what are you supposed to do?
You got to have a weird sense of humor when you get off of this stuff. So,
so anyway, in general.
So this is true. It's a technique. It's something that's possible. It's something that not just me. It's just that I went ahead and developed up a way to do that, a way to express it, I should say.
Right. So you can actually talk about it.
Yeah. And so
I
and
know
we have
the
historical record.
I was going to say, the harder I try to make it happen, the less it happens. Yeah. Because now I'm looking for an outcome. I'm back into that whole.
Right. Yeah. It's a recognizing where you are, but recognize you are with a totality of consciousness that supersedes your position on the planet. I mean, like I said, I get into the physics of it, but it's worthless. Yeah. But so being yourself and being neutral, anybody out there, this is what you should have got from this, right? Is that these two things and having a big energy field is going to make you a superstar, right?
Right.
So
you're awesome. Right? Well, thank you so much for being here with me today.
I thank you because, when Gaia asked me what I wanted to do when I went for an interview, I said, I'd like to be able to explain things to people so they can understand this is not beyond them. It's very simple things that you can do. It's very simple things you can come to an understanding of and not have to go through a life of pain and misery. It's just that simple. So,
and they don't teach any of this stuff. Oh, no.
No.
I'm honored. Yeah. I'm honored to be here with you. Yeah. If we could teach this to little tiny ones.
Oh, yeah. Well, they already know it.
No, but once you hit 6 and if you forget it, and when I was tiny, I don't think I did know it. I had it beat out of me before I hit 2 or 3, right? So.
Oh yeah, we all are. Yeah, it's all part of the same phenomena.
Same craziness.
And so me, I'm the same way. I wish that it would be taught. I wish these things because people, as they come to an understanding of all this, you literally become a much better person. And I've got a long ways to go, but I've been working on it. Okay.
Me too.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again. And we will.
And people can reach me at Energy Doctor and that's ENERGYDOKTOR at me.com or at Energy Doctor at YouTube.
And I'll be throwing that all below this video too on my YouTube channel. I'll put all your information down there.
Well, I appreciate it, and bless everybody that watched and listened, and thank you very much for having me on. All right.
Yeah, absolutely.